To developing news, a Woodland Hills woman is under arrest tonight. She's accused of trafficking bombs, drones, and ammunition on behalf of Iran's government. This comes as a ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is set to end Tuesday night.
Yeah, talks are expected to be held this week in Pakistan's capital, but Tehran has yet to confirm its participation. Rachel Menitoff live in Woodland Hills tonight with the latest on this. Rachel.
Rick, Karine, the woman arrested, her name is Shamim Mafi. She's 44. She lived at this Woodland Hills apartment complex, and she was arrested Saturday night at LAX. It's not clear where exactly she was going. We spoke to a man who lives a few doors away from her. He says she was quiet and kind and would invite him over for meals. They would even talk about the war in Iran together, and he had no inclination about her alleged involvement in smuggling arms. Listen to what he told us.
She cooked me dinner sometimes. She would invite me over. Like, she was such a sweet person. I would never expect her to be an arms dealer. Just talk about the situation in Iran, like how, the war, when it was end. I never would think that she had anything to do with the government of Iran. It's crazy to me. So, yeah, I'm just shocked. I'm shocked and bewildered at how somebody like that could be involved in such high stakes.
It kind of seems like you should have been worried about something going to see your food. No, on the real, right? It kind of seemed like another one of them issues to where you're having association with somebody and you don't know everything that they have going on, and when you see them get in trouble, that you're like, man, this is a close one. Like, that she could have took me down for whatever she has going on, because I've experienced that from multiple different levels to where just talking to somebody on the phone, not knowing that their phone is wiretapped, and here they are getting lifted off by individuals such as the federal government for something extreme that could take their lives away on the street. And here you are, just so nonchalant, not realizing that this person could be setting you up for your own trouble, for your own doom. I know that, for an individual to be going over to a lady's house, I don't know what you planned on going over there doing, but apparently she was getting a lot more out of you than you was getting up out of her.
And here's a photo of Shamim Mafi. She's an Iranian national who became a permanent resident of the U.S. in 2016. And as you said, she is charged with trafficking arms, bombs, drones, and millions of rounds of ammunition on behalf of the Iranian government. Police apparently searched and seized a bunch of items from her Woodland Hills apartment overnight. At the same time, no ships are passing through the Strait of Hormuz today. Iran has restricted much of the access, saying the U.S. has breached its trust. Not surprisingly, this is impacting oil prices. Crude oil is up 7% today alone. Meantime, President Trump says the U.S. Navy seized an Iranian cargo ship that was trying to pass through its blockade near the Gulf of Oman, and Iran is promising to respond. Vice President J.D. Vance, Jared Kushner, and Jared Witkoff are heading back to Pakistan for another round of talks.
I hope that, because I don't think that this is, necessarily going to come out in the way that the United States wants these peace talks to go, right? And the reason why I say this is because of the culture in Iran. 50 years we've been going at it with these people, right? And it seems like a culture. And I think that what America has against it in terms of the culture of the United States, seemingly coming from out of the Civil War, is America's treatment towards Black Americans. When another country look at the United States and it sees how it has treated Black Americans, its own citizens, that is from an international perspective, one of the downfalls that American has to negotiate when it comes to looking at the history of how the United States has treated so many people in terms of a white power structure. Though all white Americans are not like that in terms of believing that they are a superior, and having some consistency with identifying that the system has, catapulted catapulted you catapulted you to be in the front. And at this time, so much is going on to where you look at this issue right here and you see that the immigration has become a problem to where you don't know who you have in your country. While the fears of Black Americans has allowed you to open up the country so much so to where that you don't know who you have in your country, to where you have to be afraid of the people that you have allowed to come over here in this country for the last 60 years, all from this culture of white power, to either control this culture of white power or to keep this system of white power in place, primarily with the target being Black Americans. I've always say that if the communication would have continued to be open between Black Americans and white Americans, that we wouldn't have the situation that we have it today, particularly in this issue where you have an Iranian national who has permanent residency in this country supplying arms to the Iranian government, a country who has stated and who has for so long stated death to America, but whose culture in itself, why this cannot be a war. Listen, how could you expect to go to war with a country when they have a cultural aspects within themselves to project death to America, to bring it in through terrorisms to rival governments? While since the Civil War, since before the Civil War, since the long-standing founding of this country, you have not been able to rid of this thing called white power. So this is why you have Operation Epic Fury, and why these peace talks are more about controlling this whole idea with regards to death to America. And it could honestly be a point of having a relationship with Iran, when if the economic benefits from this deal, from these peace talks, right, will be, from an economic perspective, good for the Iranian people, then the relationship with the Iran and the United States could be different. So what are the 5 points of Operation Epic Fury? The 5 points of Operation Epic Fury was to destroy Iranian ballistic missile arsenal and production capacity. That was number one. To annihilate Iran's navy. That's number two. To eliminate Iran's drone force and long-range strike capacity. That's number three. To crush Iran defense industry. 85% of that has been destroyed. To ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon, and probably one of the most important, besides Iran not having a nuclear weapon, is to sever its ties to proxies, militia groups who wants to terrorize the Middle East. You ask why Israel is bombing Lebanon because of the Houthis. These funds that Iran are using in order to fund these proxy groups, the terrorist organizations with this same ideology, and the reason why their relationships are so tight, even though they are pretty much not the same, is because they have this one identity about them, and that is death to America. So I look at what what is the United States' biggest pitfall when looking from the out end, and that is its treatment towards Black Americans. But like Black Americans, right? For so long, you want to build up a system of control. So all I see in with Iran is this being a system of control. And it's not necessarily to say it's like that has been targeted towards Black America, but you can understand why Iran has been so resistant if you think about it from these two perspectives. And you identify with the fact that this is something that the United States have not been able to get rid of within its own culture. So when I look at that and I think about that, and then I go into this. So today we have veterans doing what I think is an honorable thing, right? And going up to the Capitol building in order to protest the war in Iran. When it's not a war yet, or I shouldn't say yet, because I don't want to see a war happen, right? I don't want to see us going into the interior of Iran, and with an attempt to try to change a culture. All you could try to do is have an operation to try to control that culture. But if you go into the interior of Iran, then here you are, you're this has begun to strike into the war. And they call it a war, and I'm gonna try to identify with what they're saying again, because yeah, they're saying that we won't pay for Trump's war crimes. Well, it's not a war yet. But if you don't think about this from a wide perspective, that it's two fronts that the United States is trying to play here in this conflict with Iran at the moment. And that's one, to stop this, control the culture of the system that's going on in Iran with regards to death to America, with regards to making an attempt to, in some form or fashion, annihilate rival governments such as the United States and Israel. If you don't think about the other side of this, and that is China, and I'm not talking about, no disrespect to the Chinese Americans, right? But if you don't think about how China has benefited from this, then you miss the whole point. Then that China is looking for any advantage to gain a win from America, to be dominant and become number one and become the world's number one superpower. If you understand that, then you can see the big picture. The big picture is not Iran. The big picture is because Iran is a sanctioned government. The big picture is China. The big picture is China. And why is it China? China has supported this whole thing with regards to arms sales. Even though it is Iranian oil, the barter system that is between China and the United States. China and Iran. Even though with the funding of its oil, $700 million of that money that Iran makes from its sale of its oil, its natural gas, and so on, it's going to proxy terrorist organizations like the Houthis in Lebanon. Who else? Because I can't remember everything. But so many other terrorist organizations that's in the Middle East. You will begin to support this whole idea with Iran. Even though that, listen, sometimes coming into agreement with people once they have a whole just objective towards you will never come to play, will never see eye to eye unless some type of force has got to be made. That you show them that this is like a pivotal point to where they have the technology to build a nuclear weapon now. At first, they didn't know the technology. Now they know the technology. And all they got to do is put the pieces together to have the capabilities to launch a long-range missile. And there you go. It was one perspective to say that, should we have waited until they did the attack? Should we have waited for them to do the attack? Should we have waited for them to attack first? Or should we be striking at them? Because if we allow China to destabilize the United States government, while China is reaping the benefits from getting oil at $8 a barrel, while we're paying $90 at the moment, a little over $90, it went up 7% yesterday. While it sponsors jihad, while it sponsors Hamas, while it sponsors the Houthis, all these individuals, right, that they are working on logistically with to drive their terrorism in the Middle East, particularly with this whole idea of destabilizing the countries like the United States. So who wins after this? China, who is trying to become the world's superpower. And if we don't see that, when it comes time to look at this, what these veterans are doing, which I don't, they have all the right to do it. It's their right as Americans to have some sort of rebellion for what's going on. But if we don't look at the long range thing with regards to this, and we don't understand that China is making so many moves to become number one in robotics and AI, and also militarily, that we've been getting surrounded, then we miss the whole point of this operation. We will miss the whole point of this operation. Let's hear him talk about it.
China, U.S. Navy intelligence says the Chinese regime is investing heavily in nuclear-powered submarines. NTD's David Lamb reports.
China is ramping up submarine production, shifting gears to all nuclear construction.
Through massive infrastructure investments in several of its primary shipyards, China has more than doubled its submarine construction capability, setting up for sustained submarine growth through the 2030s and beyond.
The U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission hearing testimony on Monday, discussing China's growing capabilities both on the sea and beneath it.
Drawing lessons from the war in Ukraine, Beijing is exploring how unmanned underwater systems could offset the U.S. advantages, particularly inside the first island chain. Last September, the PLA unveiled 2 new extra-large uncrewed underwater vehicles.
Rear Admiral Mike Brooks of the Office of Naval Intelligence says that China operates more than 60 submarines, 6 of which are nuclear-powered attack vessels. At least 2 are nuclear-powered guided missile subs, and another 6 are nuclear-powered ballistic missile subs.
China's ballistic missile submarines, equipped with long-range strategic nuclear missiles, can now target portions of the United States from protected waters near China.
So it just begs me to think, right, as I am doing my analysis with this whole issue, right, is if China is so aligned with Iran, and they're not, it's just based on it, just energy sources. They have just like an energy agreement to where they're able to get this Iranian oil for so cheap, especially since it's sanctioned oil. If China already has these nuclear capabilities, right, then why doesn't this go in with Iran to necessarily help destabilize the United States government and go to war? If Iran doesn't necessarily understand that the Chinese is using it as a pivot point to draw up a war so it can draw up a war with the United States so that China can reap the benefits from that war, you'll miss the whole thing. China has been sending the Iranian government, right, the regime, weapons at a cheap, and getting it at a cheap price, doing this at a cheap price when, it's probably not even Chinese best, right? But apparently whatever they send over there, because they do have some nice weapons. One of the key issues that they have right now is these submarines. However, from an economic perspectives, China has bit the hand that has fed them with regards to allowing America to lose jobs, while United States businesses, corporations have been sending jobs through the leadership of our federal government since Lyndon B. Johnson overseas over there to them, to where we have to get a manufacturing infrastructure back together in the United States to destabilize China, so that we're not relying on anyone else on the basis of preparing for an attack, going to war, and things like that. Attempting to be number one in AI and robotics. You need energy for artificial intelligence. Attempting to break down the United States dollar through BRICS. All these things, while Iran is looking like the target, Iran is not the target. We have got to face that. We have bigger issues to fight, and it's not getting out to the American people. So when you see these veterans, protesting, talking about, I will not pay for Trump's war crimes, because it does seem that the United States at the moment is not focused on the United States citizen. With this war with Iran, when we elected Donald Trump so he can bring back the idea that the American citizen is first, before immigrants, before anyone else in this nation, that the United States has to regain what it had, what made it so great. And while you can see that Iran is somewhere that necessarily we were, and it's trying to get to somewhere we are now, is because it's paying for terrorists to keep control of certain areas, just like sheriffs and were deputized by certain legislatures, mayors back in the day to keep control of towns. Y'all remember Wyatt Earp? And has their system to allow a system like that to make an attempt to destabilize the United States in war with an attack when they haven't even gotten as far, while at the same time we're facing with another attack from China, the Chinese government, to become number one, as they have been surrounding us, as they have been just siphoning up so much of the energy resources coming out of Venezuela, coming out of Iran, and seem like they are going to have to be more reliant either on the United States or Russia. Who do you think they're going to pick? I believe that they're going to pick the United States at the end of the day, besides having to deal with Russia. But in any event, if we can force them to pay a higher dollar for their the oil that they are getting from both Venezuela and Iran, we can play these cards on an evil plane. Especially if, from an economic perspective and a jobs perspective, we get our manufacturing back away from China. See, this is just me talking to you, because this Iranian thing is a lot. I don't expect peace talks to come out of this whole issue today. But if you bring it into focus of what we got to go through to stay number one, stay a world power, and how we necessarily have to get people out of this country, because we don't know who we got in this country. We don't know. That Iranian woman was a prime example of that. And this, as the Democratic Party consistently are losing people up out of their states, these Democratic run states, and to replace these people, because they're running their states into the ground with all these progressive policies, stuff that just doesn't work. Like it's a new world order. Do you remember that out of World War II? A new world order, to where here we're going to replace all the votes, all the power that we have in these states that we had with citizens, as we were supposed to be the party of the people. We're going to replace the people with immigrants. As people are moving, the United States citizens are moving up out of these states. They are trying to move illegal immigrants or immigrants in to keep their power in their voter base. While at the same time, we have people trying to overthrow this government from inside and without. And I look at Donald Trump, and I look at him, and I see that this is hard on him to want to go over here, and knowing that he may have to destroy the infrastructure of this country because of the people that's going to be hurt from this. And I appreciate Donald Trump, and the reason why is because he is the only one of the first president who is serious about bringing the ethos back to America so much, but doing it in a way that modifies this idea of white power, internationalism, that in order to save this country, we have got to identify what was the purpose of the 14th Amendment. This is a job that only a man can do. I'm not saying it from the perspective, I'm just saying it from, because this is probably one of the major things that really is hurting his presidency, because it seemed like the focus is off the United States citizen. In order to win this situation and have us be the great America that we are, we had to go up in India. We had to go up into Iran in order to defeat China, because China is the bigger picture. So this is just me talking it to you today, because it's so much going on with China to where we've allowed our corporations to go over there, and China is stealing all our technology. Like China would be on a scale of an Iran if it wasn't for the United States. If it wasn't for this whole perspective of and culture of white supremacy. And the reason why, if it's a time to where our leadership needs the United States citizens to to recognize how important, and to stop the domestic fighting between white America and black America, and make them realize how important that they are into the intricate part of saving this nation. Because all this immigration has come over for the last 60 years. We are the true natives of this country. We are the ones who have, our ancestry is the one who have bled, died, fought to be losing our country to stupidity, such as domestic fighting. That's one. But to the Democratic Party, who wants to remain in power and selling out this country in order to do so. This is a big fight, to where in the United States right now, we have the beginnings of something that seems like a civil war between United States citizen and immigrant. This is why you hear the Democratic Party is the main one who projecting this idea of a civil war. The main one who don't want to pass the Save America Act. The main one who is against this war in Iran. The main one who is against Donald Trump, who is trying to bring nationalism into this country, because the Democratic Party is losing their whole perspective of race baiting. The news is not going to do that. The mainstream news is not going to be able to do this for you, to let you know everything, all the perspectives. I'm not doing it as well. I can't let you know everything. I can only give you generals, right? But however, if I allow you to see what the big picture is, that Iran was necessary. And if we get these peace talks today, great. But if we don't, we still going to have to, in some form or fashion, control Iran and not allow China to use Iran as a way to gain the advantage over America. Tiny Cross-H.U.G on the Trumped Up Live show. This was a show I'm on mute. Yeah, I was on mute. My bad. Just to give you a perspective of all the things that are currently taking place, because this is just a quick concept. Tiny Cross-H.U.G on the Trumped Up Live show. Let's get this immigration up out of our system. Let's go back to a quota system. Let's stop the Democrats from allowing people who were supposed to be over here 18 months from staying over here 16, 15, 20 years, taking away American jobs, not appreciating what we're doing for them, being a deficit to this country, and let's stop the domestic fighting. Because if we don't, we are going to lose this country. Let's bring STEM Black into Black American school, so much so that we reap the reward as a country from their intelligence. Because these people that with these H-1B visas, they aren't that smart. They aren't smarter than the American citizen. They just are willing to work for less pay. And if we can't get this stuff done, who knows what the next 30 years is going to be for America. It's a good day to be a soldier.